You will all be notified presently. And on that note, welcome everyone to the first of a series of webinars that are being presented by the Design and Development Division of AECT. My name is Matthew Schmidt. I'm currently the president of the Design and Development Division. And this series of webinars will be taking place once a month from now until the convention in October. So you can expect some very exciting speakers and some exciting topics. And the first topic that we have starting things off, we might as well start off with a bang. Sonia Tiwari, or I should say Dr. Sonia Tiwari, who is going to be presenting learning environment visual mapping in learning experience design. So I'm looking forward to your presentation today, and I will pass the microphone to you.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming in today. So I presented this at AECT a few years ago, and so this presentation is sort of a follow-up and an update. Hopefully you can use it and apply it to your own research or any other work. So what are learning environment visual maps? It's just a method of analyzing the complete picture. Where do students learn overall? Because generally we just focus on one setting, like in the classroom or at home, because our research kind of focuses on one part of the learning experience. And visual mapping kind of helps us combine all of the learning that takes place in someone's life and then create a map. So a one-page kind of summary of a view of someone's learning environment. So why do we need to have a holistic view of learning environments? It's because whatever we learn in one environment, we kind of carry that learning into other aspects of our life. And Sawyer had a very nice definition of a learning environment in the Cambridge Handbook of Learning Sciences, which was that a learning environment consists of the people, the technology, the architecture, or like the physical space of a learning environment, and the socio-cultural factors that are in play within that environment. So we can't just say that my learning environment is the classroom. It is a, say, a public school classroom in a rural location with majority minorities. That's like a more descriptive view of the learning environment. Or that these classrooms do have just like one iPad that is being shared with all of the students. So the presence of technology, but to what extent? Those are the kind of details that paint a better picture of a learning environment. So, yeah. So why use visual mapping? It has already been used as a research methodology. It is very popular in ethnography. And Luna Hernandez, she uses, participant-generated photos to map out their learning environment. Or Kimberly Powell, she uses mapping to understand relation between the aspects that we were talking about earlier, the places, people's lived experiences, their communities. So mapping has been used before. The spin on that with the research that I did with my friend Yujin Chu was that we create a visual map, which is the summary of what we are doing in different parts of our lives. There are questionnaires where we ask teachers and parents to share, because children may not themselves express very accurately what kind of learning environments they have. So for children, we also added questionnaires that we need to ask the teachers and parents to get more information. And then an analysis map. And it will all start making sense as we see the example. So this is a template for the visual map. We hand it out to children in a classroom or after school activity. And we basically ask them to draw the people, the technologies, whatever learning activities you do in a setting, and what does that space look like, just like draw sketches. So for example, this is one of the drawings that we get back. And we ask them to also write keywords because, you know, sometimes drawings may not make sense. So we also ask them to write what it is. So for example, this child has drawn, you know, a Chromebook, some, I guess, like watching Discovery Channel on TV, or Khan Kids on iPad. They've drawn their pet, their sibling, I guess, or a mom reading bedtime story. So we get all this kind of information from children, and it helps to have this visual map instead of just the interview or just like a questionnaire, because it gives them opportunity to open up. It's like a low floor entry point for children to start expressing what kind of learning happens in different settings in their life. Then we also ask teachers some questions. It's like general information about the teacher, what kind of school district, or, you know, public, private, charter school, some basic information about the teacher, and like the number of years in their experience, how long they've been teaching. And then the learning spaces in the classrooms, teachers will probably give a more organized answer, you know, that we have a reading station and we have a play area, something like that. And then the learning spaces, and I'm so sorry, I just realized learning space in the other spaces. What I meant was in other parts of the school. So like the library, a maker space, or another, like a morning hall that is repurposed as a robotics club meeting area. Those kind of information is better to receive from the teachers. And then there are some questions that we ask the parents, the demographic information, what kind of learning do children experience at home and in other places, and like in their neighborhood, their grandparents' house. So like in the drawing, we see like, you know, the Natural History Museum and walking the dog. So we know that the child, even outside of the school and home, is having other opportunities to learn in other settings. And then there's the analysis map. So this is for the researcher, and this is, and in this we fill out what kind of activities what kind of learning activities are taking place in all these different areas. So like, you know, visual learning activities using pictures, images, or, you know, physical or kinesthetic activities like using your whole body, hand, sense of touch. And then we basically fill it out here. So in the learning column, you see what kind of learning activities are taking place. And just like we take the notes by Sawyer on people, technology, architecture, culture, and then we start filling out the details, taking into account not only the drawings by the children, but all the information that came in from the questionnaires. So now we have like one summary view of like one child, that what are the opportunities if we are looking for some, you know, like some large motor play kind of activities, maybe the grandparents' house or the neighborhood or community center. Those are some possible places where we can extend the learning or assign homework or activities that can be done at these other places. So it's a nice view to have from the researcher's point of view. And so the goal is to create a holistic view, directly getting visual maps from children, questionnaires from parents and teachers, and then the analysis map from the researcher. Now for adults, we can directly map out things in an interactive map like Google My Maps or proxy.co. You can directly add markers and then start adding a journal, a digital journal right there. Add notes, images, videos associated with any of the locations. And then the analysis map is very similar. You can look at the interactive map and then start mapping out in the analysis map. So here's an example. Let me stop share and share proxy.co. Okay, so here's a, I try to go to different maker spaces, and I'm trying to use the learning environment visual maps to kind of capture my makerspace experiences in San Francisco Bay Area. And so on the left here, you can see I've created some categories like sculpture, textile, ceramics, technology, and each of them have an icon. Like you get to create an icon of each. So the cup is a ceramic thing, and it tells me if I click on this thumbnail, it will tell me, oh, this is the art beat, and what am I trying to do here? Hand building with clay. It gives the address, it gives a clickable link. Like if you do more information, it will take you directly to the website of that makerspace. And so this is the way I am sort of keeping a track of all the things that I'm going to do in all these different makerspaces. And you can even, just a second, going back. Let me show some other. Just a second. So you can even see a whole list of points and the icon for the category. So for example, and I can also look at all my notes here. And so, for example, the Crucible is a makerspace in Oakland, and I made notes about the kind of things I've been doing there: digital fabrication, mechanical sculpture. And so this is like, you know, once you have 10 or 12 different makerspaces, this is a nice visual map to kind of keep a track of, and you can add images, videos, all these icons will appear here. So everything is organized and you can keep track of that interactive map. Going back to the presentation. So after this, I start collecting pictures from each of the mapping points. So if I was doing metalsmithing somewhere or resin casting, I'll just quickly go through these. Cardboard recycling, or any of the metal laser cutting, all of these things are stuff I made at different makerspaces. And I have then taken these images and added to my proxy map. So when I write an autoethnography of like my makerspace experiences, I have everything organized in like the objects photographed at different stages, the notes, journal entries about my experiences, videos of involving movement and mechanisms. Otherwise, just the photographs are enough. And if anyone's interested, Parek and G had this article on transitional objects. And I think on the map, if you are, especially in terms of making or makerspaces, if you're building something in stages, you can take a picture of the object at different stages. And that's what they call the transitional objects. And so, yeah, that was, hopefully that gives you an example how to use LEVM with children and with adults. Thank you.
All right, lovely. Thank you, Sonia. Short and sweet, but certainly to the point. At this point, we can open the floor for questions. Also, feel free to use the chat to add your questions, and we'll make sure to address those as we get to them. So the floor is open. Perhaps I can start the questions. My question has to do with how you have used visual mapping in your own design practice. So for example, in my own design practice, I tend to use mapping for front-end analysis and to inform personas and prototypes. I'm curious how you use it on your end.
So for like the autoethnography project, I'm just using it to organize my data. And really, eventually my goal is that once I have, like Bay Area has around 50 makerspaces. I've only been through like 10 or 12 at this point. So my goal is that eventually when I go through most of them, then I'll also embed this map in a website as a resource for others, like what kind of activities I did here, or like some tips, or start crowdsourcing information from other makers. So it can turn into something, but as of now, I've just been using it to organize the data. For like the book chapter that I did, where I shared the example from the children's research, in that case, it was also useful as a data collection tool, because with younger children, especially in the age group 4 to 8 that I was working with them, they don't always verbalize with accuracy, they wander off. So it was a nice way to kind of keep them focused on the task, and they opened up more while drawing different learning activities and settings.
Sonia, you've mentioned a couple of times the book chapter that you've reported this in. Have you provided a link to that, or could you provide a link to that in the chat for everyone?
Sure.
Thank you. Other questions? All right, Sonia, I've got a question that has popped up from Erica Epler in the chat. She asks, what ideas do you have for using visual mapping in higher ed or professional development, with a follow-up of, do you think visual mapping could be appropriate in these situations?
Yeah, so like in the makerspace example, that kind of research I've seen a lot, and not just with autoethnography. I think any research where there are multiple settings and there's a community involved, it always helps to kind of trace their activities over a geographical area. Or especially if you're like Gutierrez had this new, I forgot her first name, Dr. Gutierrez from UC Berkeley. She studies horizontal learning. And so there has been a lot of research in higher ed that, you know, generally in the school or even higher ed system, it's vertical learning that we focus on, first year, second year, third year of college. And horizontal learning says that whatever you learn within that first year of college, you're then applying that knowledge into other aspects of your life or developing a new line of research. So there's also a lot of horizontal learning. And what better way to kind of trace that moving around of knowledge, that transfer of knowledge, than to map it out, how you're learning one thing. And then, for example, a lot of courses at MIT are very hands-on, and the projects are rooted in real world problems. So whatever you studied in a class, then it's a good way to trace how did you apply it to your own community or a problem that exists in your life.
Thank you, Sonia. We have some more questions coming in. One from Dr. Noah Glazer. Are there any visual mapping tools, i.e. software, that you like to use?
So proxy.co is the one I love. Those are two female founders from Bay Area who created that tool. And I think it's better than My Maps on Google, because it allows you to, you know, create categories and pick icons. It's just more organized. And then it also allows you to embed it in a blog or a website. So for public scholarship, after your research is done, if you want to share some information or share that kind of interactive map, or even some journals that now allow embedded data in the digital version of that journal, it really helps to, I like to use proxy.co.
Great. And in terms of the mapping that you did with children, you showed some screenshots of what looks to be paper.
Right.
Are those made in, for example, I don't know, Google Slides or something like that?
Yeah, it's just a very crude template that we used. I believe it was like the lowest design capability of Word, Microsoft Word.
Awesome.
But yeah, I haven't found a software for that kind of data collection where like children could upload their pictures and stuff like that. I'm looking up for the link and I'll just quickly post it.
I've got the link to Proxy if that was what the question was.
Oh, okay. I'm looking for the, oh, I got it. A chapter.
Thank you, Sonia. Another question coming from Danilo Balin. Have you looked at your data using a visual literacy lens?
No, I haven't, but it sounds like a good lens to explore.
All right, let's see. Coming from Zhenyu Ren, could you elaborate more on how to analyze visual mapping based on the analysis map?
Okay, let me go back here. So it is more of like a diagnostic tool for the teachers. So generally when the teachers are giving homeworks or assignment, it's something, it ends in on a paper plane. This worksheet or workbook or a link to some whatever LMS the school is using. It doesn't generally take into account of the horizontal learning idea from Guterres that children kind of apply what they learn in school to other settings, not just home. Maybe the children has more than one location to go. It's not just by default just going back home, and it could be a daycare, it could be another class, it could be the grandparents' home. And so when the information is laid out in the analysis map, the teacher can look at it and say, so there are opportunity for some social interactions in locations like the community center or the grandparents' house. And so the assignment can then be modified to leverage that. That can you interview an older person and ask them to reflect back on their life, or like something about family history, or if it's a community center, then can you identify 3 or 4 other cultures that are curious, that you're curious to learn about. So it just opens up the opportunities to find out what else can our learning be applied to. And then even just if you look at the technology, now this kid in this example has a lot of technology at home, Chromebook, iPad, TV, learning tablet, whatever. And you might notice another student has absolutely no technology at home, but has access to a Chromebook at school. So then giving any kind of, especially if the school is not allowing children to take the Chromebook back home, to assign anything that requires a lot of technology, it just makes it inequitable. So it's a good diagnostic view for the educator to see, okay, these are the opportunities. This is somewhat the kind of culture that this child has. And maybe this is how I can modify what I'm teaching.
Excellent. Thank you, Sonia. We have another question from Tammy Huang. Do you have some data from the learner's perspective of how they feel about the visual mapping approach?
So for the children's one, I do, because I had the opportunity to record videos, and then it was also sort of, I didn't completely rely on the maps alone. It was more information came in from the questionnaires. So in terms of that, the children enjoyed drawing and kind of having a conversation while drawing. For the application in terms of the adults, the only project that I'm working on is the autoethnography. So I'm the only person there. And so I can't be like 100% unbiased, but I find it helpful in organizing the research data. It just makes, it's kind of an interactive journal for adults, because you, unlike the children where you also have to gather information from 2 other sources to make sense of it. In case of adults, you can start applying it, all of it on your own. adding the notes, adding the secondary information, journaling. So for me, it just gave a lot of clarity and made everything more organized. And I'm hoping, I mean, some of you will like try it, test it. It's hopefully a conversation. I'm willing to revise and improve the framework.
Excellent. We do have a comment from Hao He in the chat, kind of commenting on this analysis map that you have up here. The analysis map on slide 12 is very much like a scene creation table in game development.
Right, and luckily, like I have been a game designer, so I know absolutely what you mean. Except I guess like when we deal with games, we're just thinking in terms of also like fictional characters, fictional settings, props. So yeah, but you're right. The way of organizing it is similar.
Good. Well, it looks like we've gotten to the bottom of the questions and comments in the chat. The floor is still open if any of you would like to grab the microphone and ask a live question. Otherwise, I'm still monitoring the chat. It looks like people are getting ready to wrap up. So why don't we go ahead and do that? I'd like to wrap up with a final comment. That comment has to do with how the work that Sonia has presented today fits in with the phenomenon or the concept of learning experience design. And the way that I see this fitting in is in an area where we don't have a whole lot of I would say knowledge in the field of instructional design, and that is in terms of methods, and in particularly in terms of methods that are geared towards learning specifically. And so I can see that approaches such as visual mapping certainly can begin to pave the way for further methods in the area of learning experience design that are not necessarily coming from outside of our field, but instead are kind of being generated from people who are operating within instructional design and learning design. So on that note, thank you, Sonia. I'm not sure if you had anything you might have wanted to add to that.
No, that's it. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Then why don't we call it a moment? I'll go ahead and stop the recording. I'd like to thank everyone for coming. We'll be sending out a recording of this through the AECT channels. And stay tuned for further developments in the Learning Experience Design webinar series. You all have a great rest of your day.